Behold, ladies and gentlemen, the sword wielded by the greatest hero in all of Wano, SHUSUI, also known as Clear Autumn Water, also known as the Zombie Slayer, also known as the sword that'll kill you 15 times before you even figure out that you've been cut, also known as Zoro's most badass sword. I mean, okay, maybe that's a little subjective. Maybe you like Wado Ichimonji because it's the original. Maybe you like the Katetsu sword because it's cursed, but I'm sorry. Maybe it's just because I'm a fan of Bleach. And it kind of reminds me of Zangetsu a little bit. I mean, it's a black sword, you know, the Bankai, maybe a little bit, that's why I like it. But, yeah, it also has a very distinctive kick-ass sheath. So, yeah, I have definitely talked about SHUSUI before. I talked about it when I did my sword rank video, and I talked about it when I did Zoro's video. Probably made another video at some point where I referenced SHUSUI. But, I just had this weird urge to make a video about it, because I honestly couldn't tell you why, or if I did, the internet would beat me with spiked clubs. So, we're talking about SHUSUI today. Let's just do it. Are you complaining? Is there someone sitting down there right now that's like, Tekking, I don't want to hear about SHUSUI. I want to talk about something else. I'm like, no. Everyone's like, okay, no, we can talk about SHUSUI. Let's do it. Alright, so, a few things with this. The thing that I usually bring up, let's just get that out of the way, because I do have other stuff I want to reference in this video, but pretty much anytime I bring up SHUSUI, I have to address the issue of what's going to happen when you get to Wano, because this is the sword that was wielded by Ryuma, the greatest hero in all of Wano. He was a pretty badass guy. Go read Monsters. He slayed a dragon, and that's actually in canon with the One Piece manga, which is one of the reasons I love Oda so much. He's actually incorporating, like, his previous works into One Piece. Now, where exactly it fits into the timeline, that's kind of, that's not subjective, it's just unknown. I tried to look it up, because on the wiki you have the One Piece timeline, and that didn't have any answers for me there. It's obviously a few hundred years ago, because Ryuma is regarded as this great hero even up till now. Kinemon, after figuring out that SHUSUI was in the hands of Zoro, he got really pissed at him, because this grave of their national hero was defiled by Moria and Hogback a few years ago. Ryuma first appeared, or rather he was resurrected by Moria using his Kage no Mi powers. That was 7 years ago. That's when Brook first stumbled upon Thriller Bark, and he got his shadow stolen, and it got put into Ryuma. So maybe they stole the corpse a few years before that. I have a theory that it's whenever Moria went into the new world, he went to Wano to steal the corpse, and then on his way back, that's when he ran into Kaido, and Kaido, you know, he knocked him for a loop. Hey, maybe that's how Thriller Bark got into the first half of the Grand Line, because you have the West Blue, where Thriller Bark originally comes from, and then the New World is bordering the West Blue. So maybe Moria converted Thriller Bark into the pirate ship, and then, you know, he sailed it into the New World, got Ryuma's corpse, and then ran into Kaido, and Kaido just, his punch was so powerful, it was like, you know, Team Rocket in Pokemon. It was like blasting off again, and he shot the entire island over the red line, and it crashed down into the Devil's Sea. And that's the origin of Thriller Bark and how it got into that half of the Grand Line. But that was the first time we saw Ryuma. Now, it's important to notice that at that point, Ryuma already had white hair, so it's possible that Ryuma lived much more into his elder years. I think it was stated that he died of some kind of illness. You know how you're a badass samurai, or you're just a badass warrior in general, and it's an illness that kills you? That happens a lot, apparently. But yeah, so he might have died much later in his life. And I wanted to talk about how much Oda would actually incorporate monsters into One Piece, specifically into the Wano arc. Because here's the thing, there's characters in monsters, like there's Flare, who was kind of like Nami, and there's this other dude, well, he's dead now, Ryuma killed him, but he kind of resembles kind of a suave Mihawk a little bit. Now, obviously, though, Ryuma lived hundreds of years ago, so these characters wouldn't be still alive, but their family might be. It would be a neat little Easter egg to arrive in Wano, and then we find out, like the great-granddaughter of Flare or something, and then she talks about how, oh yes, my grandmother knew Ryuma and all this stuff. That'd be really neat, and it would be something Oda would definitely do. But that's the backstory involving Ryuma, and we know he was buried with his sword SHUSUI. Oh, and keep in mind, during Monsters, it's not really SHUSUI. That was something that he kind of had to modify. It's more of just a regular katana when Ryuma used it in Monsters, and then later on it was kind of, I don't even know if retcon is really the word, because it's a completely different series, but it was changed over to SHUSUI, the black blade, when you get to Thriller Bark, and that's the famous sword that Ryuma was always known to carry. So, my thoughts are that this is definitely going to be a plot thread. Alright, it's going to be a plot thread when we get to Wano. Zoro is not somebody that really hides a lot of himself. He has his swords on him. Even if Kinemon went up to him and said, Zoro, you gotta make sure to hide that damn thing. Leave it on the ship, or let somebody else carry it. Let me hide it, because if anybody figures out that, you're carrying around this sword, you are going to be killed. Like, you will be rounded up and executed, because they're not even gonna ask questions. Like, I trust you, because, we've fought snow women and centaurs together, but Kinemon should have fought freaking Monet. He has fire powers. Which, by the way, was that ever referenced, why Kinemon has fire powers? He has the devil fruit that allows him to, spawn clothing. It doesn't have anything to do related to fire. Maybe he just swings his sword so friggin' fast it just catches on fire. Zoro did the same thing when he defeated Ryuma, so I guess I wouldn't be throwing it out there. But yeah, it's like, listen, I trust you. Kanjuro trusts you, but you gotta hide it. But Zoro would be the kind of guy that's like, I'm not giving you my sword. Screw up. I'll deal with the trouble as I go about it. That's the kind of guy Zoro is. So, I could definitely see him at like he's at a bar or something in Wano, and he sets his swords down, and he's like, give me your finest sake. And he's like, alright, he's like, is that our, man, that's funny, that sword kind of resembles the great hero sword, but that couldn't be, because that was stolen years ago by an outsider. And where did you say you came from again? Oh crap. So there's two ways you can look at it. Either Zoro, well, actually, I guess technically there's three ways you could look at it. The first way is Zoro loses the sword. The second way is Zoro gives back the sword of his own will. Or third, Zoro keeps the sword. Now, the reason why the first two are different is because there might be a thing, there might be kind of like a plot thread, I don't know, where Zoro might have to duel against another samurai. That would be actually really cool. Considering Wano is the land of samurai, considering that a lot of what Zoro's aesthetic is very samurai-like, considering Oda is a huge fan of samurai movies, and that's where a lot of inspiration's going to be. I mean, we might see, who is the guy from Seven Samurai? Not Usagi Yojimbo, that's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle character, but you know what I mean, like, there might be some famous samurai designed after, like, movie characters walking around. Zoro might get into a straight-up duel. Not just like an anime fight, but like a really cool, like, duel, where you're just like, okay, and then, you shing, Ido, and then, sheath your sword at the end of it or something. Because if you really look at the roster, Zoro has not fought against a lot of other swordsmen that are like the same kind of swordsman that he is. Like Mr. One, he was a swordsman, but the swords, he was not a samurai. The blades came out of his body. Ryuma obviously was a samurai. But hey, even with Ryuma didn't really fight him in the typical way, because Ryuma was animated using Brook's Shadow, so he used that, the fencing style, which is not really, I don't think a katana is really meant for the fencing style, but, yeah, but he was a samurai, of course. He had a little scuffle with Kinemon and everything, but that wasn't like an actual, like, I'm trying to kill you kind of fight. Yeah, so not a lot of characters that he's fought against that are with that same kind of, like, they use katanas. Kaku, okay, kind of, like, once again, he had swords that were sort of katanas, but most of that fight he was spent as a giraffe, and, using, like, his giraffe powers to kind of, like, slice the tower in half and everything like that, he was more of the six powers mastery than an actual sword on sword, but, okay, maybe you can give him Kaku. And yeah, you had Hyozu in Fishman Island, but he wasn't like, I mean, he did use katanas, but Zoro was so ungodly strong at that point, it didn't even matter. I'm talking about Zoro fighting against a samurai that's strong enough that Zoro could lose. Alright, he might lose the duel, and he might lose SHUSUI. Like, someone might come out and say, you know, I don't care how you got that blade. All that matters is I challenge you for it. And then Zoro, of course, he can't back down from a challenge, you know, that's Zoro. He can't turn him. He's like, scars on a back are a swordsman's shame. So someone might actually come out and challenge him for SHUSUI, and Zoro would have to, you know, say yes. And we all like to think Zoro would win, but there's a lot of strong samurai in Wano. In fact, it was just stated in one of the recent chapters when Kizaru was talking about, hey, maybe I should go there, and Kainu was like, no, we don't know the battle power of the forces of Wano yet, and Kizaru's like, yeah, those samurai, man, they might be actually really strong. So, I don't think it's a far cry to say that there are samurai at Wano that are at the same level that Zoro's at right now, or stronger. Alright, I still think Mihawk is, like, you know, right now the strongest swordsman in the world, which, by the way, that would include Mihawk probably went to Wano at some point, so that's a story I'd like to hear. But, yeah, so that's a way I could see it, and Zoro could duel, and he could lose, and he's an honorable guy. He's not just gonna be like, well, I lost the duel, but I'm keeping this by, and then leaves. No, he's gonna be like, crap, I lost. Alright, well, on my honor as a swordsman, you know, you win this sword. So, there you go. Now, Wano is also the land of you know, swords, because there's samurai everywhere, so he could probably get another one. I wouldn't like to see SHUSUI go, but if you're comparing it to the other 3 swords that Zoro has, well, not the other 3, all 3 of the swords that Zoro has, he has to keep the Wado Ichimonji the entire story. That's Zoro's signature sword. He can't lose that. That would be like Luffy losing his straw hat, like, halfway through the story. It just would be weird, you know? So he has to keep the Wado. The Katetsu sword, because there seems to be a thing going on with that, because it's cursed. I thought about maybe it's possible the Katetsu could get broke, and then he could get the Nidai Katetsu, and then the Shodai Katetsu, maybe something like that. But that seems like there's something going on there with the curse and everything. So, I don't know. I wouldn't like to see SHUSUI go, but we'll see where Zoro, what other sword he could get from that. If I had to choose, I would say swap out the Katetsu for another curse blade, or the Katetsu gets broken, then you get the Nidai or something during at Wano. But yeah, hey, remember when the Yubashiri broke? Remember when Yubashiri broke during Eni's lobby from Shu? By the way, did I make a video about Shu? I need to make a video about Shu, because Shu is like this, he's just a captain in the Marines. He's probably have a higher rank now, maybe he's a vice admiral or some shit. But Shu shows up, and he's like, yeah, I have the power of the rust fruit, so fuck your swords! And he just grabs it, and it's just like his devil fruit can literally defeat, like, any swordsman. Like, and it's weird, you think, like, oh, just try to cut him before he rusts it. But Zoro tried to do that, and it didn't work. Zoro went to go cut Shu, and Shu literally just caught the sword with his bare hands, and then rusted it into nothing. So, it appears that, like, the second the sword even touches his skin, it begins to rust. Now, I don't know how that would go down against, like, Mihawk's Yoru or whatever. You know, in that situation, Mihawk would, I guess the trick is to cut Shu before he even knows that you're there, which is something that Mihawk could certainly do, and Zoro could do it too. It's just that he wasn't aware of what Shu's devil fruit was. But yeah, remember when Yubashiri got rusted away? It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like a full-page spread. I think it was just like one little side panel during the chapter where Zoro's Yubashiri gets rusted away, and then we're like, ah! They make it a little bit more elaborate in the anime, they make it a little bit more dramatic. There's a scene after Eni's lobby where Zoro's at Water 7, and he's kind of looking at Yubashiri, and it's all rusted, and he tries to find a replacement sword at Water 7. So, like, the anime hands up, you know, they bump that up a little bit, because we know that we're all sitting there like, what? Huh? Zoro's swords just got destroyed like that? So yeah, I hope that Oda doesn't do the exact same thing for SHUSUI if it was going to get destroyed or taken away. I hope that if he does give SHUSUI away, it would be like a really elaborate thing like the duel. Yeah, now in terms of the actual specs of the sword itself, it's a lot heavier than a lot of Zoro's other swords than Yubashiri certainly was. Yubashiri was his lightest sword, and then he swaps this out for the heaviest sword. Now, it doesn't really matter for Zoro because he trains with, like, giant, like, 3-ton weights on the Sunny all the time. So, weight-wise, it's not a big deal, like just carrying it around with him. But when he's using his Santoryu style, it can be kind of difficult to kind of get the balance, because when he was fighting against Oars and he used his, 108 caliber Phoenix, Poundaho or whatever. Poundaho, okay. The shockwave that was generated by SHUSUI was so powerful because it was so much heavier. It absorbed the shockwave of the other swords into one giant shockwave that missed Oars, unfortunately, but had it would have hit him, it would have done significant damage. So he had to take some time to get used to it, but after the training with Mihawk over 2 years, and I remember back during the time skip, I think I heard people talking about how Zoro was going to get a new sword over the time skip, while he was, like, Mihawk was going to give him something, or something like that, and I'm glad he kept his 3 swords, but, it's been over 10 years now. It's been over 10 years since Zoro got SHUSUI, and I know that sounds so long ago at this point, but I can remember it like it was yesterday. So if Zoro was gonna swap out with a sword, I guess now would be an okay time to do it. You're at Wano, right? So let me know what you guys think about that, and I really also want some more backstory with Ryuma during Wano, involving SHUSUI. So maybe we can get like a backstory on, because usually how katanas worked was that they were passed down like in the family. So, the father of Ryuma would pass on his sword to Ryuma if he felt like his son was worthy or something. So I would love to see a flashback arc featuring Ryuma in his younger days, maybe calling back a lot of cameos to the Monsters one-shot that Oda did, and we also get to see, him getting SHUSUI. Maybe like the sword he used to kill the dragon wasn't SHUSUI, and that was for a reason. Maybe he got it afterwards or something. I mean, that sounds kind of weird, because the dragon slaying thing is kind of the thing he's known for. Once you jump into the air and cut a giant dragon's head off, you've kind of become famous for that. It's kind of hard to top stuff like that at that point, So, yeah. But, I'd like to see that and more from SHUSUI. So, get ready for Wano, whenever that will happen. Later, everybody. Oh, and one more thing before I go. One more thing! Okay. Every time I do a video, when I talk about Zoro's swords and I use the sword props in the video, I inevitably get asked multiple times in the comments, like, Tekking, where'd you get these swords? Tekking, where'd you get these swords? It's not a big mystery. I went to Amazon and I typed in Zoro swords. That's literally all I did. The deal that I got, it was about a year and a half ago, about a year ago. It's when I did Zoro's video on the Straw Hat discussion series. That's when I bought them. It was 4 swords for about $150. That was the deal that I got. I don't know if that's still available. If it is, I'll put a link in the description below. But that was, like I said, a year ago when I bought it, so it might not be the exact same deal. You might have to buy them separately, or even if you could get a deal for all 4 of them together, they might be a lot more expensive, or they might be less than what I bought. So I'll put a link in the description below, the best match I could find, but there's really no mystery on where I got it. I didn't go to, like, the secret sword, the katana dealer behind the Ace Hardware up in town, like, hey man, I need some grade A steel. I'm like, oh, okay, here's the authentic Japanese steel right here, straight from the Moss Head himself. It's like, oh, thanks, man. No secret. I just went to Amazon, typed in Zoro's sword. I'm like, oh, okay, found it, and I bought them. There you go. But yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Later.